So Tim Dillon has been, let's say, underwhelmed with how Trump's second term has gone. And he's been criticizing it every now and then in soft terms, but criticisms nonetheless. And it appears like we've finally reached the point where he seems to fully regret being on Team MAGA without...
Well, it's all good, Tim Dillon, even though we are going to watch in this clip Kyle Kulinski absolutely dismantle Tim Dillon for regretting his choice about MAGA and everything else in the Rogan sphere. The Rogan sphere being Joe Rogan, people like Joe Rogan, Tim Dillon, Theo Von, Andrew Schultz, those kind of guys, like the podcast bros, comedians. Shout out to a person, though, who could say out loud that they made a mistake, you know? Shout out to them. You know, people vote because they want something different. And people are realizing that it doesn't matter which way you vote. Nothing seems to be changing. I mean, it's just insane. With that said, we're going to watch Kyle Kulinski absolutely destroy and dismantle Tim Dillon, annihilate Tim Dillon, and the rest of the Rogan sphere. Let's just get right into the clip. Tim Dillon does make me laugh, though. I like Tim Dillon. I do.
Military General Pete Hegseth, the tough guy from Fox News, is going, we want our generals to be thin and not have beards. How about we run our own country, Pete? Wouldn't that might be good too? We're worried about fat generals and beards? And then the president of the United States goes, we're going to be using American cities to train our troops because we're going into Portland and we're going into Chicago? This is a bit psychotic. Let's listen to this.
Very important mission. And I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. Because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city with an incompetent governor. Stupid governor, stupid. They threw him out of his family business. He was so stupid. I know the family. He becomes governor. He's got money. Not money that he made, but he ran for governor, he won, and now he criticizes us all the time. And last week they had 11 people murdered, 44 people shot. The week before that they had 5 people murdered, 28 people shot. Every weekend they lose 5, 6. If they lose 5, they're considering it a great week. They shouldn't lose any.
Well, yes, but we don't need the Marines in Chicago. I agree. The Democratic Party's done a terrible job with public safety.
Oh, my God. Why am I always right about everything? That's my question. What do I always tell you guys? What do I always tell you guys? When these people, they were either full MAGA, but then when it's clear that these people are destroying the fucking country and it's no longer cool to associate with MAGA, what do I always tell you? They retreat to enlightened centrism. They retreat to, I was never like fully on board with MAGA, and bro, you know what? I think both sides have like good parts and bad parts, bro, and both sides do some good things and some bad things, bro, and like, yeah, I agree the Democrats and their record on crime, bro, not that.
I mean, I'm not trying to be funny towards Kyle Kulinski. I don't know how anybody can be this knowledgeable and still think that the Democrat is doing anything for them. I'm sorry. Wait, what? This is what I don't understand at Kyle Kulinski and his wife, Crystal Ball. This is the one thing I have, especially with Crystal Ball, because I think she's super smart and super well, I don't want to say put together, but she's a great debater. Great debater. But up until this point, these people will say that if you don't like your side, you have to go back to the other side. Or maybe if you're like me, because there was somebody who put on the comments, and shout out to that person, they asked me what made me vote for Trump in 2020. Yeah, because when you're like me, you started off as a Democrat, you didn't really understand politics, you didn't know, what you really, want, but Democrats are cool, whatever. And so then you start voting that way, and then you start to really think about your values, and then you think about your citizens, your fellow man. I'm not one of those, at the time, I wasn't one of those Republicans who was like, oh, I don't want to help other people. No, I actually ran for Senate, and that was my campaign, and I'm not making this about me, and I'm going to get back to the clip. Please stick with me, and please give me a long duration. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you to everybody who watched. But so I voted for Trump in 2020 because, it seemed as though, and when I looked at his foreign policy, really, it didn't just seem as though he was giving some pushback. We should have been in Iran. What happened in Iran the other day, which will happen again, by the way, but what happened in June, that was supposed to be in his first term. And he said no. And I sometimes think but anyway, I'm not going to get into it. But we were supposed to do that back then. There's so much stuff. He was trying to get troops back from Syria. And I look at a president as, I'm not looking at a president for my local changes, but certainly for my, to keep the country safe, as far as like keeping us out of wars, but keeping us safe and trying to do something about our border, because we can't just have a bunch of people coming here. It's not good for the person coming here. It's not good for the American citizen. So that's what I thought I was going to get with Trump. And obviously he didn't win in 2020. By the time 2024 came around, I checked out his donors, and he was saying that he was going to go after the First Amendment. I was like, okay, I'm out of here. And what both of these people don't understand is that Trump sending the military, but the thing is, here's why it goes back to this, and I am finishing the point. Look, this is why I don't understand Kyle, and we're going to get back to the clip. Please stick with me. If we're going to say, like, oh, shoot, Trump is sending the military to Portland, that's bad, and it is. What if I told you that though, was started, that kind of like urban warfare training was started during the Obama administration. During the Obama administration, they did this in, I believe it was LA and in Flint, Michigan. Literal like boom bombs and everything. They did urban warfare training, because I remember when I heard about it, I was like, training in the cities for who? That was my first. I was like, whoa, who they coming for, right? Don't worry, because Trump did it again in his term, his first term. So it is the same agenda. It's just painted differently. It just has a different dress on. That's it. So I don't understand how they get mad at people who say, I'm just in the middle now, or at the very least. Why do we have to? Nobody's answering to us, yo. The only time they answer they get along in Congress or like state legislators and stuff is for Israel, not for us. Nah, man, I can't play with this. I can't.
Agree, bro, but like, don't send them. I swear to God, man, I'm not going to survive this Trump term if I hear more both sides bullshit. I'm really not. And by the way, just so everybody knows, Trump is sending the National Guard and the troops into all these different cities. Well, we know the crime figures. In D.C., for example, crime was down 30% already, and he still said, we have a crime crisis, I got to send in the National Guard into D.C. It's like, wait, but crime was down. Tim, they're making it up. There's no concern whatsoever. You think the guy who pardoned 1,200 January 6 rioters and criminals, people who assaulted officers. Oh, that guy, oh yeah, he's super concerned about crime. The guy who's bear hugs Benjamin Netanyahu, the worst genocidal war criminal on the planet, that guy, Netanyahu's at the White House seemingly every week, that guy, oh, he's really concerned about crime. The guy who himself was charged with 91 crimes and is a convicted felon in the state of New York and has to pay out hundreds of millions over the civil crimes he committed. That guy, oh, they're really concerned about crime. That's why Trump is sending him. Oh, my God. This is what I mean, bro. Even when one of these guys says something right, they're still somehow wrong. It's incredible. It's
I mean, like I said, it's not anything to get that worked up over. I just, to me, it's like, look, people are trying to figure it out. But I just told you about the military going into the cities. Kyle didn't even touch on the fact that, like, Obama did this kind of stuff, right? Maybe he doesn't know. I don't know. This is the same agenda, just a different dress. I'll see you guys at the next one. Bye.